you need to have a really good intact tablet. So the tablet should be like strong enough that it can withstand the kind of shocks that it has to pass through during transportations. Let's say I'm making some tablets back in Sweden, but then I'll be sending back to Australia. So the patient who opens up the tablet should have like intact tablet. Like, yeah, it should not be broken, but it should not be so strong enough that when you eat the tablet, it doesn't dissolve.
Welcome to It's a Material World, the show that uncovers why material science will change the world, with your hosts,
Pratik Upadhyay
and Tom Miller. In today's episode, crystallography and capsules, MSc in pharmaceuticals. Editor Tom here. Quick definition before we get into our conversation here. The term I would like to define is excipient. Excipient, in this context, means an inactive substance that serves as the vehicle or medium for a drug or other active substance, according to Google. Excipients can aid in the manufacturing, protection during shipment, and the stability of pharmaceuticals. A number of these factors will be discussed in great detail in today's episode, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, our guest today is Pratik Upadhyay. So he comes all the way from Gothenburg, Sweden. He is a senior materials scientist at AstraZeneca, which is a pharmaceutical company with a portfolio of products for major disease areas such as cancer, cardiovascular, and neuroscience. Pratik specializes in pharmaceutical materials science and solid state characterization. So without further ado, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you guys, and giving me this opportunity to talk about the pharmaceutical materials science and something which is very close to my heart, and I have been working since I started my master's. So looking forward for our conversations.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to picking your brain a little bit. And so you mentioned you've worked in the pharmaceutical space for quite some time now. So what makes you passionate about material science in drug delivery and pharmaceuticals? And what makes you excited about going to work every day?
Well, I would say my this passion or this curiosity started when I was doing my master's. So that was the first time when I was introduced to this course. It was called a solid state pharmaceutics, and it was something new. So during my bachelor's, we did study a lot of variety of subjects such as pharmaceutical analysis, pharmaceutical characterization, some laws and some engineering, and also like some herbal medicines. So it was like a quite diverse subject. So I was really confused what I should like pursue in my master's. And that's where when I came across the solid state pharmaceutics, and for the first time when I saw the crystals under cross polarized microscopy. So that's like property of the organic crystals. And when you see under those lights, you see like beautiful colors like a rainbow. I said, so it's like, wow. I mean, they're like amazing. And I mean, the passion for this field, you can see on my LinkedIn profile where my cover page is one of the pictures of those crystals. So even whenever I see through the microscope, I do like to click those pictures. So that has been kind of like a trigger point that like, okay, what's happening in those crystals and why they behave like this. So that was like my curiosity. And that curiosity further went ahead during my PhD when I was working with my supervisor on single crystal diffractometer. So he saw the crystal structure and he said to me, look, Pratik, now I'm aligning this crystal in this direction. And you can imagine the molecules are stacked in these directions. So even though like you cannot see those molecules, but yeah, you can actually characterize and you can see that, wow, like the molecules are arranged in this direction in 3D space. So my curiosity, and I just wanted to know more about the crystals. Why do behave and why do they have different properties? So that was like a driving force for me to work in this area.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Definitely, this is not my background talking about the design of these materials, but it's really fascinating coming from more of a metals perspective, being able to talk about crystals and the way that plays in as well, and talking about sort of a similar unit here. So to get a little bit more into that detail, in what ways is material science and engineering involved in the science of drug delivery and product performance? And you kind of mentioned this element of crystallography, and kind of why does that matter in this case? How does that modify the properties and vary the resulting product that you get out of it?
Yeah, so before I start with like how the material science is used in this pharmaceutical industry, but I would like to step back and try to understand like why all these things are important. So we need to understand first is who is the end user of the pharmaceutical products is the patient.
Right.
So first you think about patient, and you have very diverse patient. It could be like small kid to like really young adult. It could be like really old age person, or it could be some different like medical conditions also. So you have to think about patients first, and based upon the patient needs, that's how you design the product. So the pharmaceutical product could be anything. It could be like gel, paste, or it could be like, I would say, tablet, capsules, solutions, syrups. It could be inhalers, medical devices. So there are like wide range of products. And you can see that, let's say you have solutions, you have gels and paste. So you apply different engineering principles, let's say viscosity, solubility. And when it comes to powders, of course, powder handling is like really important. So material science do play a big role in devising or like formulating these products. And it's mostly ultimately depends upon which kind of product you're designing.
And so, in particular, we talk about a lot of times when we're modifying the properties of materials, modifying those properties kind of like dials or knobs or something like that. And so what are those specific materials phenomena that you can kind of dial in on as a scientist that need to be consistently considered in this pharmaceutical field?
So I would start talking about the powders and handling of the powders. That's where my specialization is, and that's where I've been working a lot. So let's consider. So when we talk about powders, it's not just like powder handling. We have to look at the different physicochemical properties of the drug substance. It could be solubility, it could be particle size, it could be mechanical properties, powder flow. So for example, let's talk about sand and salt. So sand is like really nice material. It flows very well, and of course salt. But you can see that salt is very soluble in water, but you cannot dissolve sand. And if you want to make any tablets out of sand, you cannot make out of sand. So you can see the challenges. So that's kind of like the challenges you always get in the pharmaceutical industry, that you get variety of like medicine. And let's take about the wheat flour. So wheat flour, I would say like it's really not good in powder flow. So you need to improve the powder flow properties. So you have to look at, you make granules, you make different properties, you modify those properties where you have like optimum powder flow. So those are like kind of process parameters that you always keep on checking, and you can characterize those properties.
And so there are definitely other fields, especially in like powder metallurgy and things like that, where you have similar considerations. So speaking to some of those similarities, how are some of the principles of drug delivery and, powder handling in this space similar to other subfields of material science?
Yeah, we do borrow a lot of concepts from the different areas. Let's say you talk about powder metallurgy. So one of the important parameters in making tablets is the mechanical properties. So I talked about sand. I mean, you cannot make tablet out of sand. So you need to understand why and how you can make it. So most of the mechanical properties concepts are borrowed from metallurgy, and even like many times I open the chemical engineers textbooks. I also read about the metallurgy, slip planes, and other properties, because those are like some of the borrowed properties that we always revisit. And it's just not in that area. So if you look at the pharmaceutical literature, that apart from organic crystals, there's a trend of using amorphous systems also. So there is a use of amorphous drugs. And most of the characterization techniques or the equations that you see in the books or in the literature that are borrowed from the rubbers. So even though like there is a difference between those two systems, but yeah, some of those concepts are also borrowed from different applications.
Just a quick follow-up there. When you say amorphous drugs, what does that mean in this context, and how does that differ from some of these crystalline drugs that you were talking about earlier?
So when you talk about crystalline materials, you can imagine kind of an array of molecules arranged in a periodic fashion in three-dimensional space. Let's say you think about diamond, like it's like tetragonal structure around it, like in perfect space. But in amorphous, there is no kind of 3D structure. So it's not an order system, but it's a kind of more disordered systems that you use. And there are certain benefits with disorder systems, is that you have higher free energy, you get higher solubility. And solubility is one of the biggest parameter in the pharmaceutical industry, that the drug has to dissolve. I mean, you can imagine if you eat sand, it's not going to dissolve. But
it wouldn't be a good time either way.
Yeah.
So essentially, having an amorphous drug, you may see benefits in terms of solubility and that sort of thing, which, okay, cool.
But then also like when you talk about amorphous system, also they come with kind of some disadvantages, such as instability, because this is like high energy system.
Yeah.
So they tend to go back to their normal state, which is kind of crystallizing back with time. So in those cases, you add a lot of excipients. So, well, excipient is a word that we commonly use in pharmaceutical industry. Yeah. So when you think about like tablet, capsules, or anything, It's just not the drug is present. There are a lot of additives we have to add. So when you talk about, like, say, let's say paracetamol or ibuprofen in a tablet, that would be like 100 milligram, 200 milligram. And if I give you 100 milligram, 200 milligram powder, it's quite difficult to handle. You wouldn't like try to take a spoon of 100 milligram and just eat it. You would like, you need to make up some bulk where you can handle those powders quite well. And that's where we add a lot of excipients. So it's not just only properties of the medicines or the drugs that's really important. It's also the additives that you are going to add. And some of the additives have like different functions also. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot to consider. Can we take a step back real quick? You mentioned the importance of mechanical properties. That's kind of what you mentioned when taking into consideration powder metallurgy. So I was just wondering, why are the mechanical properties so important to consider when making these tablets? Like, what are the things that you're looking at?
Well, there are many aspects when we talk about mechanical properties. So first one is that you need to have a really good intact tablet. So the tablet should be like strong enough that it can withstand the kind of shocks that it has to pass through during transportations. Let's say I'm making some tablets back in Sweden, but then I'll be sending back to Australia. So the patient who opens up the tablet, it should have like intact tablet. Like, yeah, it should not be broken, but it should not be so strong enough that when you eat the tablet, it doesn't dissolve. It has to break up. It has to release those properties. There are a lot of factors that are involved in the mechanical properties. And another analogy I can use is about the crystallography, where you think about diamond versus graphite. So that's like one of the most common phenomena we all in pharmaceutical industry has been investigating is the polymorphism. So if you open the papers or the research papers, I think they date back in like late 1800s, where there was kind of phenomenon of polymorphism. So when you talk about the carbon, it's called allotropes. So carbon has two allotropes. That is called graphite and diamond. And diamond is like really hard, but when you talk about graphite, it's really soft. And that's like, I'm quite always fascinated. The answer lies in the crystal structure. And that's the such properties that you evaluate of individual excipients or even drugs. And that's how you combine those properties to make an optimum tablet.
It's like the Goldilocks range that we kind of mentioned in another episode, right? You can't have it too hard, but you can't have it too soft. It has to be able to be breakable, but still be wear resistant enough to make it through transport.
Yeah, and of course, you might have seen different type of tablets that we coat different tablets like red, blue, green, yellow colors to make it like more elegant. I mean, there are like certain reasons of like coating those tablets. And then when you're coating the tablets, also the tablet shouldn't break. So there are like a lot of factors involved when you're going to make a tablet. It's just not you just go there and just make a tablet.
Right. Hey, just squish the powder together. It's a lot more sophisticated than that.
That's why you have a job right now.